Emma Collins never imagined that one broken pipe could throw her entire week into chaos. It was a bitter January night in Seattle, the kind where the cold air seemed to cut right through the walls. She had just finished dinner when she heard the strange rattling sound from the bathroom. At first, she thought it was nothing, maybe just the wind outside. But moments later, a rush of icy water burst through the old pipes, flooding the floor. She scrambled with towels, tried to call her landlord, but the situation was beyond her. The pipes had completely given out, and the only option was to leave. With no time to think, she stuffed a few clothes and her laptop into a small suitcase, slipped on her coat, and rushed outside. The streetlights glowed on the wet pavement, her breath visible in the cold night as she made her way to the nearest hotel. She told herself it was temporary, one night, maybe two at most. But deep down, she felt unsettled. She had been clinging to stability after a painful breakup, and now even her home had betrayed her. The hotel lobby was warm and quiet, filled with the faint scent of coffee and polished wood. Emma checked in quickly, her voice tired but polite, and was given a key to the fourth floor. She pulled her small suitcase across the carpeted hallway, the wheels thudding softly. As she reached her room, she noticed someone standing just outside the door next to hers. He was tall, wearing a navy jacket, his dark hair slightly messy as if he had just run his hand through it. His eyes looked weary, yet gentle, the kind of eyes that revealed more than words. He glanced up as she approached, and for a brief moment, Emma felt the odd sensation of being noticed in a way she hadn't been in a long time. "Rough day?" The man asked casually, his voice calm, almost soothing. Emma blinked, surprised he had spoken. She wasn't used to strangers in hotels being so open. Still, something in his tone made her answer. "You could say that. My apartment flooded tonight. Pipes burst." He gave a small chuckle, not mocking, but understanding. "That sounds like the kind of problem you never see coming." She managed a tired smile. "Exactly. I guess I'm your new neighbor for a while." He nodded, his expression softening. "Well, welcome. Sometimes life has a strange way of pushing us out of our comfort zone." Emma unlocked her door and slipped inside. But her mind lingered on the brief exchange. She hadn't expected kindness. She hadn't expected connection. She had been bracing herself for a night of silence, scrolling through her phone to distract from the loneliness. Instead, one stranger's simple words carried warmth. Inside her room, she placed her suitcase by the wall and sat on the edge of the bed. The heater hummed softly, filling the room with dry warmth. But her thoughts wouldn't settle. She thought about how icy life could unravel a broken pipe. It's an unexpected night in a hotel, a stranger's glance in a hallway. She brushed it off, telling herself it was nothing, just a fleeting moment. Yet she couldn't ignore the strange calm she felt, a spark of curiosity she hadn't experienced in years. That night, as she pulled the blanket around her and listened to the quiet hum of the hotel, Emma didn't feel as alone as she had expected. Somewhere behind the wall, her new neighbor was likely settling into his own night, carrying his own story. And for the first time in a long while, she wondered if this unexpected stay might lead to something more than just inconvenience. It felt like the beginning of a story she hadn't yet learned to read. Emma tried to sleep, but the unfamiliar hotel room felt too quiet, too empty. She tossed, turned, and pulled the blanket higher, yet her mind refused to settle. Just as she was about to give up, a sound drifted through the thin wall separating her room from the one next door. It was faint at first, almost like a whisper. But soon she realized it was musica guitar, soft and soulful, the kind of melody that carried emotion without words. She sat up, listening closely. The tune wasn't loud, but it was steady, almost tender, and it tugged at her in a way she didn't expect. It wasn't the kind of music you played for fun. It sounded like someone pouring their heart into every note. She found herself leaning toward the wall, her chest tightening with curiosity. Minutes passed, and Emma couldn't resist. She slipped out of bed, pulled on a sweater, and stood at her door. Before she could talk herself out of it, she gently knocked on her neighbor's door. The door opened slowly, and there stood Daniel, guitar still in his hands, surprise flashing across his face. His dark eyes softened quickly when he saw it was her. "I'm so sorry," Emma said quickly, her cheeks warm. "I didn't mean to interrupt. Your music is beautiful." Daniel tilted his head, almost embarrassed, but then smiled faintly. "Thank you. It's just something I do when I can't sleep. Helps me think." Emma hesitated, not wanting to overstep. But something about his voice and the quiet openness of the moment made her brave. "Would you mind if I listened? Just for a little while." He glanced at the guitar, then back at her and stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." The room was simple, like hers. But it carried his presence, his jacket hanging over the chair, an open notebook on the desk, the faint scent of fresh coffee in the air. She sat by the small window while he set the guitar aside and moved toward the counter where a coffee maker hummed. "Would you like a cup?" he asked. She nodded, suddenly aware of how strange yet natural this all felt. Moments later, they were sitting across from each other with steaming mugs in their hands, the city lights glowing faintly beyond the window. Daniel broke the silence first. "So, apartment trouble brought you here." Emma let out a quiet laugh. "Yes, pipes burst. I didn't have a choice. Honestly, it's been a mess." He nodded knowingly. Life has a way of throwing us into places we don't expect. She studied him, curious. "And what about you? Why are you here?" For a second, he seemed unsure whether to answer. Then he sighed. "My mom had surgery last week. Nothing too serious, but she's still recovering. I came to be close to her, just in case. I stay here between hospital visits." Emma's expression softened. "That must be hard." He shrugged gently. "It's not easy, but she's strong. Stronger than me, sometimes." His smile was faint, but behind it was something heavy, unspoken. The conversation grew natural, flowing between them like they had known each other longer than a few minutes. Emma shared how the last year had been difficult, how she had ended a long relationship and had been trying to piece her life back together. She didn't mean to reveal so much, but with Daniel, the words came easily. They spoke about small things: 2 favorite books, places they'd traveled, music that made them feel less alone. The hours passed unnoticed, the coffee cooling in their mugs as they leaned closer, caught in this simple warmth of shared stories. At one point, Daniel picked up his guitar again. "Want to hear the song properly?" he asked. Emma nodded eagerly, and he began to play. The notes were soft, steady, filled with emotion he didn't try to hide. His voice joined low and husky, carrying words of longing and hope. Emma listened, her chest tightening again because it wasn't just music hit, felt like pieces of his soul laid bare. When the last note faded, neither spoke. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy with meaning, as though both were afraid to break it. Finally, Emma whispered, "That was beautiful. You don't just play, you feel it." Daniel's eyes met hers, and in that gaze she saw gratitude, sorrow, and something unspoken that stirred her deeply. By the time she returned to her own room, it was late. The hotel was quiet, the halls dim, but inside Emma's chest her heart was restless. She hadn't expected anything tonight. Yet she found herself replaying every moment: the music, the conversation, the way Daniel's words carried both strength and vulnerability. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the dark window. She should sleep, but her thoughts kept circling back to him. The stranger next door, with his guitar and his quiet honesty, had stirred something in her. She thought she had lost the feeling of being seen, understood, and connected. For the first time in months, Emma felt less alone. And though she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, she couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected night was the start of something she hadn't even known she was waiting for. The next evening, Emma tried to keep busy. She had gone out during the day, walked around the chilly streets of Seattle, stopped at a cafe, even browsed through a bookstore. But no matter where she went, her thoughts kept drifting back to the hotel and the man in the room next to hers. She remembered the way Daniel's music filled the silence, the quiet strength in his voice, the way he looked at her as if he really saw her. It was unsettling, but also comforting, and she couldn't shake it. When she returned to the hotel, the sky was already dark, and the hallway was quiet. She placed her bag on the small table inside her room, telling herself she needed an early night. But before she could settle in, there was a soft knock at her door. Her heart jumped. She opened it slowly, and there stood Daniel, his guitar case slung over one shoulder, his hands tucked in the pockets of his jacket. His expression carried a seriousness that immediately caught her attention. "Hi," he said quietly. "Do you have a minute?" Emma nodded and stepped aside. Daniel entered, placing the guitar case near the wall, but not sitting down. He seemed restless, his eyes moving around the room before landing back on her. "I don't want to disturb you," he began, his voice steady but low. "But there's something I've been carrying around since yesterday. If I don't say it, I think I'll regret it." Emma's breath caught. She didn't know what he meant, but the weight in his tone made her chest tighten. She gestured toward the chair. "Sit, please." He shook his head, almost too nervous to relax. "Emma, I wasn't planning to say this. I thought I'd just keep it to myself because this SS meeting, it's so sudden. But the truth is, you've touched me in a way I didn't expect. These last 2 nights, talking to you, hearing you laugh, sharing things I haven't said out loud in months. It's made me feel alive again." Emma felt her pulse quicken. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. She searched his face, looking for hesitation, but there was only sincerity. Daniel went on, his words spilling faster now, as if afraid he might lose the courage. "I've been walking through life like a shadow. My mom's health has been a constant worry, and I've been carrying this weight alone. But with you, it's different. You make me forget, even if it's just for a little while, that everything feels broken. You've given me something I didn't think I'd find here, of all places, hope." Emma swallowed hard, motions swelling in her chest. She hadn't expected this, not from a stranger, not in a hotel she never wanted to be in. Yet everything he said echoed her own feelings. The loneliness she had been living with, the quiet ache of wanting to be understood. The longing for something real. He had put it into words. "Daniel." Her voice trembled and she paused, afraid of saying too much or too little. "I don't even know what to say. I didn't think anyone could feel that way about me, especially now. But you're not alone in this. Talking to you, listening to you, I felt something too. Something I thought I'd lost." Their eyes met. The silence between them was filled with everything they couldn't say. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, powerful, and undeniable. Daniel took a small step closer, his voice softer now. "I know we don't know what this is. Maybe it's just 2 people crossing paths at the right time. But I couldn't leave without telling you. You've touched my heart, Emma, more than you know." Tears blurred her vision, though she tried to blink them away. She wanted to speak, to tell him she felt the same. That his honesty had broken through walls she hadn't realized she'd built. But the words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded, her smile trembling but genuine. "Thank you for telling me. You don't know how much that means." The weight in the air shifted, softer now, warmer. For the first time in months, Emma felt something stir inside her, something fragile but real. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but in that moment, she knew one thing. Daniel's confession had reached a place in her heart she thought was closed forever, and that was enough. The morning came too quickly. Pale sunlight filtered through the thin hotel curtains, and Emma woke with a strange heaviness in her chest. She knew today was different. Her phone had buzzed late last night with a message from her landlord. The pipes were fixed and she could move back home. Relief should have been her first reaction, but instead, she felt torn. The hotel had been uncomfortable at first, an unwanted stop in her life, but now it had become something more. It was where she had met Daniel, where she had laughed again, where she had listened to music that healed parts of her she didn't know were broken. She packed her things slowly, folding each piece of clothing with more care than necessary, as if delaying the inevitable. Her suitcase looked as small as it had the night she arrived, but everything felt different now. She zipped it closed, took one last look at the quiet room, and sighed. Downstairs in the lobby, the hum of morning activity surrounded her. Guests checked out, staff moved quickly behind the desk. The smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air. Emma set her suitcase beside her and waited for her ride. She tried to stay calm, to remind herself that this was only a few nights, that she was simply going home. But her heart refused to believe it was that simple. And then she saw him. Neil appeared at the top of the staircase, his guitar case in one hand, his jacket draped over his arm. His eyes found her instantly, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He walked over slowly, as if weighing each step, until he stood in front of her. "So," he said softly, glancing at her suitcase, "this is it." Emma nodded, her throat tight. "The pipes are fixed. My landlord called. It's time to go back." Daniel adjusted the strap of his guitar, his face calm but his eyes uncertain. "I figured it might be soon." He paused, then added with a faint smile, "Guess I should have prepared myself for goodbye." The word hit Emma harder than she expected. Goodbye, just like that. 2 nights of connection could vanish into memory. She shook her head gently. "Maybe it doesn't have to be." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "What do you mean?" Emma took a breath, choosing her words carefully, but letting honesty guide her. "I don't know what this is, Daniel. I don't know where it's going. But I know I don't want it to end here in a hotel lobby. You've given me something I wasn't looking for, something I didn't realize I needed. And if we walk away now, we'll never know what could have been." For a moment, silence stretched between them. People moved around. The noise of the lobby carried on, but it felt like they stood in their own quiet world. Then Daniel's serious expression broke into the kind of smile. It came from deep within. "I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted. "Because the truth is, I don't want to let this go either." Emma laughed softly, the tension in her chest easing. They exchanged numbers, their hands brushing as their phones touched. The small gesture carried more weight than either expected. It wasn't just about staying in contact. It was about choosing to carry this connection beyond the hotel walls. Her ride arrived outside, and the driver honked gently to signal. Emma reached for her suitcase, but Daniel stopped her with a quiet "Emma." She looked up, and in his gaze she saw sincerity, warmth, and a promise he didn't put into words. "I'll call," he said. "I'll answer," she replied, her voice steady. With that, she walked through the glass doors into the crisp morning air. The city smelled fresh after a long night of rain, and the cool breeze brushed against her face. She placed her suitcase in the trunk of the car and climbed inside. But as they pulled away, she turned for one last look. Daniel stood just inside the lobby, guitar case by his side, watching her leave. He raised his hand slightly, not as a farewell, but as a silent vow. Emma leaned back against the seat, her heart racing yet calm in a way it hadn't been in years. Life had forced her into this hotel against her will, breaking into her routine, tearing her away from the familiar. But sometimes life's detours carried unexpected gifts. The burst pipes had been nothing but a problem at first: mess, inconvenience, expense. But they had also been the reason she crossed paths with Daniel. Without them, she would never have heard his guitar, never shared late-night coffee by a window, never listened to the words that touched her deeply. As the car drove her back to her apartment, Emma felt a certainty she couldn't ignore. What began as an accident, an inconvenience, had turned into something meaningful. It wasn't the end. It was the start of a story neither of them had planned, but both of them wanted to explore. For the first time in a long while, Emma smiled without hesitation. The pipes had burst, but maybe, just maybe, her heart had opened.